Teachers who respect all. The response to duty's fall. Strengthen us the weak to change. Even it's all less we less. Knowledge sent us heavenly Father, gratitude, wisdom from above. Justice be us forever, Jamaica, 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 land we belong.
Thank you.
Vice President for Academic Affairs at the Micro University College, Director of the Institute for Technological and Educational Research, ITA, Professor Clinton Hutton, Assistant Director for ITA, Mrs. Sandra Gray Alvaranga, Senior Research Fellow at ITA, Dr. Beverly Johnson, Research Fellow at ITA, Mrs. Monique Jackson Reynolds, Mrs. Violet Hutchinson, HR Manager of the Nuttall Hospital. I think she just stepped out for a moment. Other distinguished guests, visitors to the MICO today, members of the faculty of the MICO, students of the MICO, visitors, ladies and gentlemen, all, good morning. Welcome to Research Spotlight, a morning when we turn the spotlight on research and researchers at the MICO and remind ourselves of the traditions of excellence and innovation for which we are known. Today's event signals a strengthening of our resolve to rank among the top academic institutions involved in research and publication. For the first time, the MICO is providing tangible support for research to the value of $200,000 for each faculty research project. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a good beginning, and it's a clear demonstration of the notion which we often use in Jamaica, putting your money where your mouth is. We always articulate the vision, and we have made a small step, but an important one. This signals a new direction for the MICO and evidences our support for faculty, and we expect that it will fuel an increase in research activity from which we will identify very good output. Last year, we recognized faculty with a good research and writing record. And this year, we have widened the scope to include a departmental award for funded research. Ladies and gentlemen, MICO is now classified as a university college. It's our intention in the very near future, by Act of Parliament, to be the MICO University. Not a degree factory, but a university in the true sense. And we all agree that research is part of the ethos of every successful higher educational institution. The results of research provide a platform through which we achieve greater understanding of our society and ourselves through increased knowledge on existing subjects and new knowledge either to unexplored subjects. Research for research's sake has its place, but it's when the results of research manifest their influence on society, impacting and enhancing human life, in particular education and the social life, that the true value is realized. So today, The MICO recognizes 4 research pioneers, 3 individuals and 1 department as well, for their work in helping to further cement the MICO brand as an institution which is serious about research. Whereas a financial incentive is provided for the execution of research by department, we are not yet able to incentivize research done by individuals to the extent that we would like to. Our goal is to get to the point where we can eventually fund any groundbreaking research done by our faculty members, supported by our students. We congratulate the Institute of Technological and Educational Research, ITA, for spearheading research activities at the MICO. And if we continue on this trajectory, my prediction is that in another 10 years, we'll stamp our research dominance in the region. This, ladies and gentlemen, will be the continuation of our commitment to excellence. Again, welcome to Research Spotlight, and I trust we'll have a fruitful discussion.
Thank you, Sir Sewell, for those opening remarks. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct pleasure to participate in the growth of this research recognition and to celebrate those among us who have been sharing their research work, pioneering their research, indulging in their own curiosities in classroom exploration and taking it to another level. We're also celebrating those of us who choose to take another form of engagement, which is writing, and writing is critical. Those who are involved in publishing actively in the newspapers, bringing voice and bringing visibility to the MICO community. Ordinarily in the past, for certain things, they would turn to another institution as the great voice of reason. But we are steadily proving ourselves to be the voice where education is concerned. And we want to encourage others to step up to the spotlight. So today, we are going to honor 3 individuals. The first of which is Mrs. Monique Jackson Reynolds. And we are going to ask Professor Hutton to make an award to Mrs. Jackson Reynolds. So, Prof, can you come to the front for me, please? Mrs. Monique Jackson Reynolds has been a technology integration literacy specialist for the past 18 years. Do not let her youthful face deceive you. She is a lecturer in the Department of Language, Literacy, and Literature here at the MICO University College. And we have been very lucky to co-opt her as a research fellow with ITA. Mrs. Jackson Reynolds will serve at ITA as our writing specialist. So here she performs duties. If you have manuscripts that you would like some input on, be sure to consult with our Monique Jackson Reynolds. She is a certified STEAM educator from Texas Computer Education Association. And later on, we will be hearing from her as she shares her insights from her exciting research journey to unpack facts and perspectives relative to multiple themes. And we will hear from her later. So we would like to recognize Mrs. Monique Jackson Reynolds. we will invite our VP Academics to present the next award. We would like to recognize a newbie to our campus. A newbie who, by no means the fact that he is new, did not prevent him from jumping into the micro-ethos of doing with thine might. He writes prolifically in the newspapers, and I'm sure we have been engaged with his various insights into the world of education, as well as other subject matters. So we would like to invite Mr. Leroy Ferron. Where is Mr. Ferron? Let me tell you a little bit about this outstanding gentleman. Leroy Ferron Jr., JP, is a multifaceted educator and 2019 Amazon bestseller and author of 7 books, a published writer with over 50 articles in the Jamaica Gleaner, the Jamaica Observer, and the Western Mirror. He has presented at local and regional conferences and has a keen interest in educational management and earth science research. What date is it today? So you know that this gentleman, after leaving here on March 21, he is going to be presenting at the Portmore Community College on unleashing innovation, creating opportunities through research and development. He will be the next speaker at the next Research Tuesday seminar series, which is going to be put on by ITA. So look out for that notification and ensure you attend. So congratulations, Mr. Ferron. Our final individual recipient this morning was also awarded last year. So it tells you that her interest is a sustainable interest. It's a persistent interest. And if anybody knows her, she might be little, but she's a firecracker. And she is on fire for research. I'm going to ask Dr. Benjamin to come up again to give the next award. And our awardee is Mrs. Shalon Samuels White. Mrs. Samuels White is a passionate educator with over 14 years of experience, and she currently serves as a teacher educator in the Faculty of Education here at the MICO. Now, there are 2 persons from the Faculty of Education. I am not sure what formula the dean has, but we are encouraging you to continue and encouraging the other faculties represented, one by Miss Monique, and we are waiting on our science person to come on board. So it's just a word of encouragement while we recognize Miss Samuels White. She's a firm believer in the transformative power of quality instruction and ardently upholds the view that the role of the teacher stands as a high calling. Shalon holds a Bachelor of Science in Secondary Teacher Education and a Master of Arts in Curriculum and Instruction, both with distinction. She is a woman of excellence. She is acknowledged as an ASCD Emerging Leader and was awarded in 2022 by the Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development, Washington, D.C. So she's not only doing work here, she's gone abroad, and we celebrate her. As said before, she was the Torchbearer Award in 2022, and we're very happy that she's continued in the tradition to also receive an award this year. Congratulations. So our final award this morning, and we're going to ask Mr. Sewell, our acting president, to make this presentation on our behalf. I am hopeful that all the participants on that groundbreaking project are here. And if not, we know at least one is here. So this award, I must tell you a little bit about the award. It is a competitive thing. We received a few applications for our first research grant, which was $200,000. And the winning application came from a team led by none other than Ms. Shalon Samuels White. The team looked at, and this is now practical and groundbreaking research that is going to impact how we do things here at the MICO. So she looked at challenges in lesson planning design and drew from it some lessons which we hope will manifest into changes to how we do things here in the near future. So we want to welcome again, Mrs. Shalon Samuels White representing the team, Ms. Gillian Campbell representing the team, Ms. Lorna Morgan, who is unavoidably absent. Is Miss Alicia Robinson here? Wonderful. And Miss Tamika Green Mitchell is also unavoidably absent. You know that we have concurrent sessions and some members are participating in the CSEC activity as we speak. Oh, here she is. Wonderful. So colleagues, this is the team to beat. Okay, well. Let's come out of them. I see a proud dean. How about bringing our proud dean? Come and join us, proud dean. And our department head. Oh boy. I'm telling you, this is the team to beat. I also want to acknowledge that this team was actually our first trial. So we learned together, we learned the process, we learned how to go through the application cycle, we learned all of the necessary things that will make for good project management. And we are now encouraging other departments, other faculties to join in and, you know, contend for this wonderful award come next award cycle. So on that note, I will end the recognition component of our little award ceremony, and we will hear the findings of the research from two presenters. Dr. Johnson, over to you.
Good morning, my beautiful and students. It is indeed my pleasure to chair this research presentation. And I am so proud. I'm so proud of my former Department of Professional Studies, for being the trailblazers. You know, we are trailblazers. And for those of you who don't understand or don't know what the Professional Studies Department does, is that we are, well, I still say we, they are responsible for professional training of every student that attends the MICO. So every student that attends the MICO, University College, has to come through Professional Studies Department. And so this morning, I am pleased to present the team from Professional Studies, as you heard, Miss Gillian Campbell, Miss Lorna Morgan, Mrs. Alicia Robinson, Miss Tamika Green Mitchell, and the leader, Mrs. Shellon Samuels White. And Mrs. White is going to present on the findings that they garnered from the research, challenges in lesson planning design, lessons learned. So I'm going to be asking Mrs. Samuels White now to come and do her presentation. Please receive her.
I should probably. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me well?
No, good night.
All right. Let me go through the research questions first. Number one, what are the perspectives of pre-service teachers and supervisors with regard to lesson plan design? Number two, what difficulties are experienced by pre-service teachers in designing quality lesson plans? 2B, what weaknesses do existing lesson plans reveal? Number three, what factors contribute to the difficulties in lesson plan design among pre-service teachers? And finally, how can teacher training program be improved to address the challenges identified in lesson plan design? Now, let me go through the methods that we used. We used the mixed method, co-concurrent triangulation design. If you noticed, we use both the qualitative and quantitative. And so when it comes to qualitative, we did a survey. Let me apologize. Quantitative, we did a survey. A 37-item questionnaire was used. It consisted of closed-ended questions. The total population for this was 157 students. Of this, 69 pre-service teachers responded. This was done via Google form. And as I've said before, 69 responded. That accounts for 44% of the response rate. Now the analysis, it was descriptive statistics. For the qualitative, we used a semi-structured interviews. Of this, 11 supervisors and an adjunct was used. Here we had 22 open-ended questions. So the analysis, we used a thematic analysis. So for the inclusion criteria, supervised students on practicum for at least 1 year. When it comes to the documentary analysis, 20 lesson plans were used, and this stemmed from all faculties. So the analysis is evaluated in 5 dimensions. Now, we used the qualitative for trustworthiness and validity. So here, evidence convergence across data sources for member check-in, bias controlled, that is reflectivity, and multiple researcher analysis. Also, ethical considerations were considered in that all participants, they consented via being verbal or written. So of course, when it comes to the lesson plan data, it was, participants remained anonymizing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. All right, our time is short, so we're just gonna cut to the chase where the findings are concerned. So in terms of the first research question, where we looked at the perspectives of the pre-service teachers, overall, their perspectives was positive. So 96% of the student teachers, they felt that lesson planning was important and they were confident in their abilities to design quality lesson plans. They also indicated, 71% of them, that they needed more practice in writing lesson plans and that lesson plans should be pre-prepared for them. But they did not believe that lesson planning was time consuming, and that went against our expectations. As it relates to the supervisors contradicted the students' self-assessment in that they were not satisfied. 73% of them indicated that they were dissatisfied with the quality of the lesson plans. So we see where there is a contradiction there, but that can be explained with the literature in that self-assessment bias persons tend to inflate their confidence. So in terms of research question number 2 and 2B, we looked at the difficulties experienced as reported by the student teachers and their supervisors, as well as what we were seeing in the lesson plans themselves when we analyzed them. So as Ms. Campbell outlined, 5 dimensions, we evaluated the plans in 5 dimensions. Writing instructional objectives was one of them. And students reported through the survey, 87% of them indicated that they found writing cognitive objectives to be easy. However, we structured the questions so that there would be inverse correlation. Whilst there were in that, we asked a question, do you find it easy? And then we asked another one, do you find it challenging? So we're expecting if they are finding it easy, then the respondents would be low for those who find it challenging. However, we found that there was the correlation was not as strong as we expected, but again, that can be explained through the literature. And Committee 2022 et al., they explain the whole matter of recency and primacy effects, but at time I'm not going to go through that. So the students found that easy. The lesson plan analysis also corroborated that in that we didn't see much challenge in terms of writing cognitive objectives in the plan, and the supervisors did not outline any specific challenge in that. However, we noted that the expectations of the supervisors varied in that the expectations of what is considered a quality cognitive objective varied. Some lecturers or supervisors rather, they emphasize SMART objectives. Some emphasize the use of the Megas ABCD model. Some expect that all of the elements in the ABCD should be in all objectives. So the expectations varied. In the lesson plan analysis, we did not find much challenge, except that some of the objectives were written as activities, and there were some misconceptions in terms of understanding the degree component of the ABCD model. Not going to go through that because of time. In terms of the affective objective, 65% of the students indicated that they found it easy to write. Can you go back to the previous slide, please? 65% of the respondents indicated that writing affective objectives was not a challenge. However, we found in the documentary analysis that there were only 40% of the plans had affective objectives. So again, we're seeing a little bit of discrepancy. And in terms of supervisors' reports, the supervisors say that they contradicted the students' ease in that they saw where affective objectives was a challenge, but it should be noted that supervisors, not many of them emphasized affective objectives, and they reported in themselves that this was not a focus for them in their discipline, some of them. We also found in the documentary analysis that where there were affective objectives, the activities themselves did not intentionally promote the development of the objectives from the affective domain. So they were there in the objectives, part of the lesson plan, but the activities did not promote the development of these objectives. Psychomotor objective, that was not a challenge when we looked at the lesson plans. 81% of them found it easy to write these objectives, and where there were psychomotor objectives, for example, in physical education and music, these were well written. The next dimension was the 5E instructional model. And next slide, please. The overall, the findings or the students reported that they didn't have much challenge in terms of selecting activities at the various phases of the 5E. So as you can see on screen, engagement came out on top. 83% of them found it to be excellent, good, or fair. Then we have exploration, 75.5% of them, and evaluation coming in as well, 75%. However, so there are positive views. When we looked at the documentary analysis, next slide, please, the engagement activities, only 55% of them were deemed to be satisfactory or advanced engagement activities. And the supervisors indicated that at this phase, they find the challenge is that the activities don't necessarily flow into the lesson, or they were not connected, so to speak. Exploratory activities, 32% of the plans reviewed showed exploratory activities that were satisfactory or advanced, and the supervisors also, and we noted this in the lesson plans as well, where the activities selected, they were not always promoting self-discovery, or they weren't exploratory in nature. Explain, 79% of the plans were deemed basic or satisfactory. And again, the supervisors indicated that the challenge with the explain phase is that the students had a problem with relinquishing the power and giving the students the opportunity to speak and explain their findings, in that they tend to take over at this time and begin to teach, so to speak. With the elaborate phase, 70% of these plans were found to be basic or satisfactory, but the supervisors did not indicate any great challenge in this area. Evaluate, this was very good for the students in terms of what we saw in the plans, and the supervisors themselves did not indicate any great challenge. And that corroborated with the students' ease that they expressed in the survey. So we are seeing where again, the students' confidence level and what the quality of what the supervisors were expecting and what they actually do in practice, there is a discrepancy. So we found also that in the evaluation, this was just another little challenge that we saw in mathematics secondary plans. Math practices is something that is expected in the math plans, and when the math practices are stated, the activities themselves did not necessarily intentionally develop or bring out the math practices as we would have expected. So that is something that we observed. And it should be noted, though, that not all disciplines utilize the 5E model. For the 4Cs, we saw where, next slide. We saw where 87% of students indicated that they did not find it challenging to incorporate the 4Cs in lesson planning. However, documentary analysis again showed that only 60% of the plans had satisfactory or exemplary representation of developing the 5Es. The 4Cs, thank you. The supervisors singled out critical thinking and communication as specific problem areas for the students. Creativity was not a challenge. As it relates to differentiated instruction now, again, we had inverse correlation, questions that would suggest inverse correlation. 80% of the students indicated that they had a good understanding of differentiation, but only 6% indicated that they found it easy to plan for learner differences. Again, this is suggesting that the students themselves have identified their challenge in translating their understanding into practice. The documentary analysis also supported this view in that only 15% of the plans had attempts of differentiation. The supervisors outlined that some of the challenges that they're having with students regarding differentiation is that the students tend to put their students, the pre-service teachers tend to put their students in groups, but the grouping was not based on any specific, in response to specific learner needs. So they were just in groups for group's sake and not necessarily meeting a need. The supervisors reported that they had failed attempts at tiering the activities and catering to other needs, such as physical challenges or disabilities. The problems that we found, or the challenges that we found with the lesson plan, is that yes, they had a variety of activities. They were using videos, they had written materials, audio, etc., but these were not in response to any specific learner need, and that's what differentiation is all about. It should be noted, though, that the supervisors themselves had different expectations and understanding of the concept of differentiation, which could, explain the fact that the students are saying that they have a good understanding. When we looked at it from faculties, the major challenge for the Faculty of Education is writing instructional objectives. For science and humanities, the challenge was selecting activities for the different phases of the 5E and implementing differentiated activities. So we are seeing what the challenge is across the faculties. Jumping along to research question number 3, we looked at factors that could contribute to the difficulties that the student teachers were having. And the student teachers themselves, 3 main factors emerged. Next slide, please. Time and workload constraints was indicated by 81% of them. But again, there's a disparity in that 73% of them said they had adequate time to practice. So the recency and primacy effects can help to explain this. They indicated that the variations in how lesson planning is taught across the courses and the departments contribute to their challenge. 75% of them said that. And as I explained earlier, because this variation was observed in supervisors' responses, so this is corroborated here by the students. Supervisors had different expectations. Students are saying this is a factor for them. And inadequate guidance. 58% of them said they were given inadequate guidance, and that is contributing to them. However, again, 89% said that they are satisfied with the guidance that is given by their supervisors. And so this is suggesting that while student teachers are satisfied with the supervision that they're getting, or even in their classes, there is still room for consistency in terms of the guidance given. Supervisors also supported that practice, time to practice was a factor that may contribute to the students' challenges. And they indicated that how the programs are organized or the structure of the teacher training program across year groups can be a challenge in that for the most part, lesson planning is, for most of the disciplines, based on what the supervisor said, lesson planning is really introduced at third and fourth. And so when they are introducing professional studies at first year, there's a gap when it is reintroduced. So they might have forgotten some of these things. And there needs to be greater consistency across the sources. And the supervisors also indicated that students' attitudes and readiness contribute to their challenge. And it should be noted that the supervisors themselves reported that the consistent or the variations could be a factor. So it was not just the students. Right, so let's jump to our final research question, where we sought to find out what could be done to improve the teacher training programs. And the students indicated, 90% of them said that more hands-on practice in lesson plan design is needed, as well as 70% of them said that integrating feedback from more experienced teachers or mentors could help to solve some of the challenges that they're having. And supervisors also said that reducing the student-teacher ratio on practicum can help them to give more proper guidance to the students. And some supervisors recommended screening the applicants through psychometric assessment to ensure that the attitudes are ready. So at this time, Mrs. Green-Mitchell will speak to the recommendations.
All right. Good morning, everyone. So now that we would have heard the findings, this is what we recommend. Enhanced hands-on practice, consistency and coherence right across for departments and faculties, addressing time constraints that the students would have complained about, targeted training for supervisors, regardless if you're a lecturer, if you're an adjunct, right? Training for supervisors, program-specific training for both students and supervisors, that's discipline-specific. Also, integration of the feedback and mentorship. I know that we would have included mentorship sometime at the MICO, but just to, we need to get back to that or move ahead with that, right? Strengthen, thank you. Redesigning program structure. They did complain about the gaps in the programs in terms of when they start lesson planning and so on. So we need to look at redesigning our programs to ensure that we accommodate the varying types of students and of course remedy the challenges. Screening prospective pre-service teachers, reducing supervisor to pre-service teacher ratio. Amen. And also we recommend further research, right? Conduct longitudinal studies to track changes in pre-service teachers and supervisors' lesson planning practices over time after we would have done the implementation of these recommendations, including professional development and of course the training. Explore the relationship between lesson plan design practices and student outcomes. They are out there and of course they are teaching the nation's children, and including achievement and engagement. We want to see how is it that one affect the other. Also to conduct qualitative research to look deeper into pre-service teachers' experiences within the training programs, including their perceptions of program effectiveness, the relevance of the coursework that we give to the practice, right? And the support received during the field experiences. Thank you so much, colleagues, for listening.
All right, based on my program schedule, I would have the other presenter and then questions, but based on the recency of the information, I'm going to invite questions and then we move on to the next presenter. Yes, sir.
Morning and colleagues, and wonderful presentation. And my question, maybe when I came to MICO 34 years ago, if I asked this, I would put myself at risk. but we are now in an environment of academic diversity. During your interaction with the subjects and with your literature, did you find anything to either support or debunk the following notion? The competency of mental planning is rarely recognized, and that persons who are quite adept at thinking on their feet are quite reluctant to be engaged in the writing of lesson plans. Did that idea come up? Mental planning, the whole matter, I can think on my feet, I'm confident, the whole value of lesson planning.
Not necessarily mental planning, but the literature did suggest that those who are more experienced in terms of how long they have been teaching and so on, they are better at, thinking on their feet and responding to the changes. But new teachers have to do more detailed planning in order for it to be successful, or their teaching need to be successful. And the reflectivity, the supervisors did say that sometimes students are not very reflective, and that would come up in the lesson planning in that, some of the choices you have to ask yourself, what were you thinking? So the literature do suggest that the more they teach and plan and practice, they should become better. So more practice is definitely something that's necessary.
The supervisors also did say that the students who are mentally prepared, their readiness, that would affect how they plan as well. So that could account for it.
Right. Any other question?
And the attitude as well.
It's a comment, not a question. Excellent research, colleagues. And I just want to underscore a point that you made about mentorship and coaching from supervisors. It is something that we need to, and I'm happy that your research suggests that we perhaps need to have pull-out programs and sessions for supervisors. I remember when I did my teaching practice, my supervisor would teach the class, and I observe Mrs. Beckford, God bless her soul. Because I had struggles, I went into the space believing that I had the knowledge, and so I wanted to teach. And she said, no, that is not teaching. You have to facilitate the process. And she would take the lesson plan, facilitate the class. We had a conversation about good practices, and then I was expected to model what I observed. And that is something that we need to encourage among our supervisors, because sometimes we go in the space to supervise. I have supervised the students. We go in the space to supervise, and we are pointing out what are some of the gaps and what are some of the things that they are not doing so well. But if we were to teach a class with them or for them to model what they see, because we teach how we were taught. That's the reality,
Yes.
And so sometimes they are not, I'm very careful how I say this. Sometimes we are not modeling for our students. So we speak a lot about a pragmatic and a constructivist environment, but oftentimes it's telling them about the theories and not practicing it for them. So perhaps it's something, as your research suggests, we need to pull our supervisors out and say, can you explore? And perhaps that's another research, to compare and contrast those lecturers, supervisors who have that approach, and how do students do in those environments.
Pick that up in the findings. The supervisor, the students, 90% of them said more hands-on, and note the disparity between what they said they have a good understanding, but how to. And when we spoke to some of because we did have external adjunct supervisors, those who are in the field, they were suggesting that more hands-on practice be done here at the MICO, because when they do get into the classroom, sometimes the practicality of it doesn't come through. And also, lays in with what is going on, because sometimes the supervisors, the adjuncts did say, sometimes there's a mismatch with what we teach and what is expected in the system.
Right.
Because
And-
systems change or differ across.
And to
educational
support what
institution.
Mrs. Dr. Leon said, there's this micro-political nature of supervision. So maybe we need to change the word supervision to mentor, or coach. Perhaps we need to do that. Any other question?
Well, good morning, colleagues. I would want to comment as well on what Dr. Leon mentioned, but to put a little bit of a spin on it, but maybe we want to alter the model of supervision that we have. I remember looking at one where the lesson, well, of course, the supervisor observed a lesson, but the lesson was recorded, and then the supervisor sat with the student afterwards, observed the student in him or herself teaching, and talked about it.
Yes.
And I think that may be a model we need to take a look at. But I enjoyed the presentation as well.
Yeah.
And I noted that you had recommendations all the way from enrollment, all the way up. And I'd like to have them, please. So please send your recommendations to me. Thank you.
Right. And we have some comments from the Zoom, so we'll.
So from the Zoom, Franklin Bennett said pre-service teachers need coaches, not supervisors.
Yes.
And Peter Evans said, unlearning certain behaviors from more experienced educators in order to improve on new age students can be difficult, but is not impossible.
All right.
I hope I'm not talking too much. Just to say that program design, in my opinion, is more critical than supervision. Why? If it is that we design or redesign our programs to ensure that right across from year one throughout, students are getting that practice, then the foundation would have already
Yes,
been built.
excellent. Yes.
So the supervisor now, then the coaching
Yes.
would take place, because they can't coach if it is that there's no foundation built that is teaching, right? And so the redesigning and the supervisor did state that the redesigning of the programs, I believe that is something maybe long-term, but we need to look into that.
All right. Any other question, comments? Okay, so I'd like to commend the department, commend ITER for having facilitated this very important research. Now, I'm just concerned about how all this information can lead to improvement. So is there a mechanism, or perhaps it could be researched, a model that can lead to improvement? In so doing, that is how we would assure quality. When we can demonstrate that what we have, the research, the
Yes.
findings, they won't just sit there, but they would actually lead to improvement in what we do. So
That's what we're hoping
recommending-
for.
Yes.
That's what you're
Okay.
hoping for. And yes, and we have our VP of academics.
So we can be assured that when we actually get the documented findings, it will be circulated with the senior management team as one of the stop points. But outside of that, we are glad to have the VP here. So we know that when the findings come, that's something that he can
Yes.
possibly champion.
Sir, just a quick comment about that, because one of the things I learned from the UCJ visit pertain to our attempt at setting up what we call an assessment unit. And the specific thing that the UCJ was recommending to us is that we have data impacting professional development for staff.
Yes.
So we have a unit there that is not now operating in that kind of context, but really and truly we need to feed, my intention is to feed the data there so that we can see tangible outcome in relation to student and also professional development for colleagues.
Good morning, colleagues. Awesome job, my colleagues. All right, we'll come after you. All right, but awesome job. In terms of the outcome of the research, I noted in the research that the whole matter of the affective domain was a matter that, you know, was a challenge both from the students' perspective as well as the supervisors'
Very important
perspective.
domain.
And it is, given the space that we are now in, that affective domain is threatening the whole matter of learning. So, and I also noted, well, it was kind of missing in your recommendation as to how to treat with that aspect of the plan itself. So I don't know, that may be an area, yes, but it may be an area of focus, you know, for the training that would be taking place at a later date. But awesome job.
Understanding is a challenge, so they recommended faculty. That's why we recommend faculty-specific training, so that, because the supervisors did say, when we interviewed them, the challenge is, how does this work for my discipline, especially the technical, what you call those, practical areas? Yes, they are saying, I don't see how this can work for my discipline, even though when we ask for like, what is your, give us a ideal objective, we saw where what they said, affective component was coming through, but they did not recognize it. So it's a understanding that.
All right. I'm taking one final question or comments from our dean, because we know we have a time factor to consider.
Thank you. Good morning, colleagues. My team, job well done. Yes.
Thank you, Dean.
You're welcome. We have quite a bit of work to do, including the Department of Professional Studies on this matter. You know, we have already identified a course that needs to be tweaked to better serve the community. We also, at a point in time, had meddled with the idea of clinical supervision. I didn't see it being practiced appropriately. However, it is time that we look back at that model. It may have implications for our pockets, Mr. President, but if it is to be done for the good of the nation, let it happen. Yeah. And so we have work to do, and I love the ideas that were put on the table this morning, because you have given us ideas for future research, because we are going fully into research mode.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So I just want to endorse the commendations of the team from Department of Professional Studies, and I'm sure this is going to be a motivation for the other departments. All right. Just want to make a presentation to the team, Mrs. Sarah, of our recent Journal of Education Special Issues in Education. You have to give me one more slide.
We actually hope that it contains your work, the work of the community here. And we hope that it will make its way into students' work as well. So on behalf of
ITO, we'll be very happy to give you a copy of our recent journal, and on top of which we expect to see in the forthcoming version some of these names that we see here today in writing. All right.
Yeah. Thank you very much again, team Professional Studies. All right, so you've heard about Mrs. Monique Jackson Reynolds, somebody who's on fire for writing and research. So at this time, I'm going to be inviting Mrs. Reynolds to come and present on fostering a STEAM. We know that STEM and STEAM are two areas that are very topical. Fostering a STEAM-powered workforce, overcoming literacy challenges through collaboration. Please make Mrs. Reynolds welcome.
Good morning, everyone. I'm inculcating teacher mode, you know, when you finish one thing, want to ensure that you're all ready for the next session. So bear with me. If you know my personality, I'm just like this. Move your shoulders back 3 times, everybody. 1, 2, 3, take a deep breath. And the good thing is that what we're going to talk about is not disconnected. I like the fact that we zoomed in from the home. So we're kind of like doing a bottom up. Now, this research now is looking at global movement, national plans, and community interventions. So, all right. So it is fostering a STEAM-powered workforce, overcoming literacy challenges through data-driven research. And for this type of discussion, I have to backtrack a little bit to ensure that there is some background, because I went to another conference previously, and sometimes we assume that because the information come out in the news, and we have our meetings and all of that, everybody, especially educators, we are all on board and understand the process. But I was really kind of taken aback and surprised by the type of questions that I got from educators, right? And I had to kind of even go back to ensure that for this presentation, and there's going to be a full presentation on this topic at the JTA conference in April. So, and I'll tell you why. Yes, why it is that we are called now from the MICO to share what we have found, because it has implications for the entire nation. So let's go into it. I'm going to go through background very quickly because of the time. So I'll say skip. So just to backtrack, from the budget debate discussion, our Prime Minister mentioned the fact that we need to be in transformative mode as a nation. And he mentioned the 97 million new jobs that are coming through technological application. All right, next. So he got that information from the World Economic Forum. And this is where all the heads of governments, all the researchers come and they present their statistical data, and they make decisions in terms of where is the world going in different sectors. And in regards to the education sector, they explain that we need to look at how we are teaching, how we are preparing this generation for the future workforce. Do we agree? We understand that we need to uncover all of that. So the report also mentioned that the type of jobs that are going to be coming up by 2025 are adapted to new division of labor between humans, machines, and algorithms. And we see that happening, right? And guess what? There has been an accelerated push towards global STEM interest. All right, next slide. But even from before that, the report that came out looked at the skills required for the future workforce. And those skills include analytical thinking, innovation, active learning, creativity, technological design, critical thinking, complex problem solving, all 10, right? And then now, and emotional intelligence, we must mention that. The Internal Bureau of Education, IBE, that's within UNESCO, right? They define STEM now as the use of science, mathematics, technical engineering knowledge to solve
daily or societal problems, making the learning of science and technology, engineering, mathematics, more meaningful and contextual. So we're kind of moving away from these disciplines being in isolation to helping the person understand how to amalgamate all of these skills so that we can not just pass the exams, but we can live, we can thrive, we can be innovative. So that is the purpose. They found in their report that many educators consider STEM to be an integration of 2 or 3 or 4, all 4 disciplines in lessons. So you have the core content, but then what is the relationship with the other disciplines so that persons can understand. We move from theory and then we practice application. All right, so the education global sector has named the 4 C's, and I mean, I'm glad that the team mentioned that earlier as well, so we are not in the dark, we are utilizing the 4 C's. All right, so these are the 21st century skills. So they are kind of condensed, those 10 skills coming out of that report. All right, this is the part that I'm going to be brave just in case I get stoned. But I think I have enough data to explain myself right here. Requisite skills of the 4 C's are rooted in the arts. Look at this. Look at this diagram. I created this diagram so that I could explain it because people come to me with questions. Even from London, persons are calling me, right, to ask, what is the difference between STEM and STEAM? What is the relationship? It's not a fight, it's an advancement. So understand this now, everybody. Look at this diagram, right? And you know I can draw a little bit. The roots, right, come from literacy skills, word recognition, vocabulary comprehension. You grow listening, reading, writing, speaking. You have the language arts, yes? You have visual arts. You have performing arts. All of those, if you look, they go up and they bloom into communication. Am I right? Collaboration, creativity, critical thinking. And I must say, critical thinking has to do with all 5 levels of comprehension. Who knows about the Barrett's taxonomy? All right, another time we go into that part, but we are operating functionally in this country. Literal and a little bit of inferential comprehension. But we need to move into evaluative, appreciative, right? So that we can be prepared. We can be prepared to prepare the STEAM-powered workforce coming up. All right. So the need for STEAM. So there were implementation gaps when some organizations were implementing the STEM thrust. So we are all for the STEM thrust because we know what's coming. What we are looking at now, especially for us as the educators, is the methodology. How do we foster the STEM disciplines, right? So we add a little flavor to it, the arts, right? So STEM initiatives were a good start towards preparing relevant workforce, but STEM STEM-only programs were still limited to standardized exposure to content and concepts. Critical processes of communication. Do you remember even some of the findings from the team's research? Collaboration and critical thinking needed improvement even here in how our trainee teachers are inculcating those type of skills in the lesson plans. So I'm glad that the information is related. So collaboration, creativity need to be fostered by infusing the arts to form STEAM education. All right? So it's really just incorporating the arts at different stages of learning so that we encourage problem solving, creativity, critical thinking, and cognitive skills. It's the art is really the cohesive element that makes STEM learning accessible and inviting to students who are eager to apply their unique sense of creativity to real-world problem solving. But we know we're on a mandate as a nation now, right? We are all full steam ahead. So the Prime Minister mentioned that we urgently need to transform the education system so that our children have the skills to participate in the global revolution. This is why we are here at the MICA too, isn't it so? We need to be relevant to prepare our citizens to make their mark internationally. So full steam ahead. I just took these snippets. From the internet. Next slide. Yes. And if you look at last academic year, if you type in STEAM, we are on fire as a nation. You have national STEM thrust partners with British Council. You have work on first STEAM school advances. You have research developed in STEAM labs. You have JPS Powers Education, $16 million. Next. And then you have the rollout of the first STEAM Academy coming up. And that was featured in Caribbean News. Jamaica is seen as trend-setting in the Caribbean in regards to STEAM. So if you don't know, now you know. So what's the problem? Why is Monique up here? All right. Thousands of Jamaican students lack both functional and critical literacy skills needed to become proficient in STEAM disciplines. It's a big roadblock for us. The Government Commission report just recently, it explained that here are some statistics coming out. So according to this report from the 2019 exam, 33% of the students can barely read. 56% of our students can barely write. And 58% of our students can barely find information. So we need to understand this to know how we need to train our teachers to deal with these gaps. And to kind of expand it, so many schools are affected. Right now, the Ministry of Education, they're having roundtable talks, advice board committees in terms of how to address this situation. And I dare say, there is no STEAMing without literacy. STEMing, but you know, STEAMing is advancing STEMing. 126 primary schools, 56 secondary schools, they need intensive literacy support. I have this here just to give you a little insight because I'm asked these questions. So I put these in there for you to understand. Many of you might not facilitate literacy in your teaching. So you need to understand what is going on in the island, in our country. The test that they refer to, the grade 4 literacy test, right? That those persons have not mastered. It includes, I put some samples here for you to see. So word recognition, grade 4 words where they're to circle the words that to represent the picture. All right? Personal information, your name, your nationality, your surname, all of those, address. That is what we're talking about, you know. So I want to make it clear what kind of skills we're talking about. Then there's a grade 4 level passage that you read and you answer questions. Most of the questions are vocabulary questions, literal questions. Some might be inferential questions. All right. Literacy is a fundamental human right and critical aspect of individual and societal development. So this is coming out of another educator's article in our papers. However, despite significant progress in global literacy rates, Jamaica continued to see underserved communities facing barriers that impede access to deal with us. So for us, there is no data given to the public that give us the actual number of students, where they come from, the school and all of that. So guess what? From 2012, I have been researching this particular topic. When we actually look at it, if we were just to take out 2009 and look at that 33% that did not pass, we get 13,749 Jamaican grade 4 students. All right? Number of students. Then there are the dangers of ripple effect, where several factors affect implementation. And then we have the increasing number of students moving from grade 4 to 5, 5 to 6 in the high schools, graduating, and still you saw the sample I gave you in terms of just matching a picture with a grade 4 word, filling out your personal information. You have adults who graduate high school who still cannot do that. So that is what I am trying to get across in terms of the importance of us understanding that. And just combing through some of the data based on the actual number of students who didn't pass over the years, we have way over 120,000 students who did not master the grade 4 literacy test. Those students, our practicum students, have to deal with in high school right now. So I have, through the Writing Center and our department, students from various departments coming to us. Why? They are to teach subject area classes, but they realize the students in grade 10, grade 9, 11, they can't read, right? So this affects all of us. Persons kind of undermine the meaning of literacy, you know, thinking about reading as just calling words. It's not. It's actually identifying at the lowest level, understanding the whole other plethora of complex abilities, interpretation. That's when we move over into inferences, creation, right? Communication in this increasingly digital text-mediated world. So, STEAM-powered literacy research and researched and proven. So in other countries, in other areas, recent studies show that combining STEAM with literacy had a positive impact on cognitive development and led to a boost in literacy and mathematics performance. The studies also show that students who were exposed to STEAM were better able to engage meaningfully, right, in assessment compared to classmates who were not. So we're coming down to narrowing the problem. I went through global movement, national movement. We're narrowing it down closer to home. Now, the fact that so many schools are affected all over the island, the Department of Language, Literacy and Literature here at the Michael University College is called upon several times in each academic year by schools, churches with an educational outreach program, and learning centers. I mean, we get calls like crazy. They all beseech assistance for professional development for teachers and facilitators to equip them with strategies and best practices to address the overwhelming literacy challenges being faced. Just last academic year, we got, and I documented 19 requests, formal letters to go out into the schools all over the island. And we had to form teams and do our best if the literature persons came on board, right? Language persons, literacy persons. And we ended up being able to support 11 schools. That's just last year. And this is outside of our regular time, but guess what? Guess what? It needs to be done. So I'm coming down, zooming into one particular request. At first, from 2020, we got that request. It's in a volatile community. And you can understand why the precautions by some persons. Even myself, you know, my husband was like, no. But then I got continuous the year after and the year after. So at the third year, we looked at how we could assist those individuals. So there is a community in Kingston, Jamaica, that they have some learning centers. And through those learning centers, they provide free intervention. They get facilitators to come into the learning centers, and they get sponsorship from community members who are now affluent, and they have some money, and they provide the resources and so on. So the students from those communities, many times when the schools are putting on, you know, those marathons and so on, they can't afford to go, right? Those interventions. So these learning centers are actually in the community. It is free. You walk there. However, guess what? Can I tell you that many did not take on the opportunity, and that was a concern by the managers of the learning center. And guess why? These students in questions are the PEP age students, grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, and even grade 7 and 8, those who are in pathway programs. They are older. Some of them, when I meet them, the boys are even taller than me. Now remember, literacy skills is the issue right here. And if something, usually the program was labeled literacy development, literacy camp, or whatever, many of them, guess what? They don't want to go. So they don't stigmatism. Other people might say to them, you don't see, and things like that. So it affects their pride. They're humans. No interest in just reading alone for reading's sake. Low attendance. This one? The one with the poster. Back to the one with the poster, right? So this, we come down to this particular request. So the students could not understand the PEP resources that were provided. They got free books, free resources, all of that. They could not do the activities. They had previously compounded literacy skills gaps. They were in grade 4 and they were reading at kindergarten level. Some of them, even the letters and sounds, they had issues with them. And they were age 10, 11, 12, 13, and even 14. Facilitators were not trained in literacy instruction or even how to infuse literacy instruction. There is the need for STEAM. STEAM-powered literacy research in Jamaica. So the purpose, we took it on. I took it on this time with the perspective to gather some data. And the perspective, understanding information regarding STEAM now. Because what I usually do at the different schools I worked at as a literacy specialist, using the literacy floor box method, it wouldn't really work for these students. So what is the difference? How are we going to invite them and attract them to want to even learn while developing the skills? So the purpose was to gather information in an attempt to solve the challenges, right, in regard to the learning center, improve their grades and so forth. And we took on something called, this type of research is collaborative action research, where even though I am the lead, a lot of the information came from persons in the community, the parents, the students themselves, the managers of the learning centers, and documents from the Ministry of Education in terms of guidelines to follow. What should happen to them? Where should they go? We infused mixed methods to apply to the action research. And this is where we combine the elements of quantitative research and qualitative research. And the quantitative came about through analyzing the data from all of these students. Some of them, there was no data for them, so we had to actually administer some assessment to find out what the issues are. So the research questions for this project was, what are the effects of professional development towards the use of STEAM education on a community-based literacy intervention program? That's the facilitators. Get them ready to facilitate the students. Number 2 was, how does the implementation of STEAM education infused with explicit literacy instruction affect the academic performance of remedial students in grades 4 to 6 who reside in this community? So the ethical considerations, because children are involved. So the meetings were held with the managers of the learning center, facilitators, parents, to discuss the intention of recording the data for research and publication. So that is the understanding. As a matter of fact, they said anything I want to do because they were so elated that we were coming to help them. Permission was received to use data bearing collective statistical findings without the students' names. Permission was granted to use the specific pictures of selected students in presentations and media coverage. Data collecting instruments, semi-structured interviews to gather authentic data. So at the beginning, we had meetings and interviews with the managers. We wanted to find out what were the challenges faced, what are your objectives of this program, what do you want to achieve? Parents, guess what? A lot of the parents had similar issues as the students. So we facilitated a sit-down registration process, and they were so appreciative of it. So we got to sit down with them and help them fill out the application form. And while we do that, we do an informal interview with them, and we document some of the concerns. Some of them broke down. So it's real out there in terms of the challenges. So the parents were interviewed, students were interviewed and guided to document their responses as journal entries. As the lowest levels, if they could even write, I like science, and the science don't even spell right, we want to foster it and open channels for them to start to practice the skills. Facilitators of the classes were interviewed before and during the professional development sessions. Google Form survey was used to find out. So we had a 5-week professional development series for them in June of last year to prepare them for the summer program. And we used the survey to gather information regarding the levels of competency of those teachers in terms of facilitating literacy strategies, administering the IDRI, that is the informal diagnostic reading inventory given by the Ministry of Education. And then what do they know about creating STEAM-infused lessons and activities? So based on that information, we were able to tailor the workshops to meet their needs for what they are going to do. From the IDRI, students were assessed to retrieve the current levels of word recognition, vocabulary, fluency, and reading comprehension. And again, I told you, they were operating way below level. Anecdotal records, we kept brief notes based on close observation. What were the responses to the program? We allowed them to give us their free talk time, where we had hidden curriculum and we fostered metacognition, helping them to understand what they know, what they don't know, what they need to know, things like that. So we recorded the progress of the students at the end of each week. Weekly notes were compared and to evaluate the effectiveness of the strategies and approaches used. So based on research question 1, the result is that the findings from this program reflected advantages of innovative. We're at research question 1, findings. Next slide. So based on that question, what are the effects of the professional development? The findings were that the advantages show that innovative planning and student-centered instruction made a big difference. Participating facilitators displayed increased confidence, competence, and enthusiasm in their delivery of STEAM-based literacy development lessons as a result of the professional development and strategic collaborative planning. So I'm bigging up Miss Kadian Stevenson. She is now the cluster leader of the language and literacy department. I am the outgoing cluster leader. And she came down into those communities with me in her summer. And we created impact, and we are very glad that we did. And what we did was to give the participating facilitators a certificate of participation and so on. And they even shared with us that they were called upon at their schools, in their communities, to come and share what they have learned from us. So we are infecting positive change. I put this here to remind us about the 4 C's. Implementation. We found that for the center that I was located at, so even in regards to what Dr. Leon mentioned, what we did was not just workshop and leave them. We went down and we taught with them for 3 weeks. So we modeled what was expected. And I think the confidence came from that, because where they were timid, we were right there. I was in one community across from the other. Mrs. Stevenson was in another community, right? And the facilitators, there's a little walking distance. The facilitators could come to us at any time, and we spent 15 working days with them in the program. But guess what? Because now we re-promoted or rebranded the program to STEAM-powered summer school. Guess what? For my center alone, that could only hold 25 students. Registration and attendance for my center received 54 registered participants on the first day. Because even though they have literacy challenges, everybody know about STEAM. Everyone wants to participate in the technological advances, right? By day 2, there were 68 students. So through collaboration, we got help from Food from the Poor, and we opened up a storeroom beside us. And we got persons to bring in fans and chairs because they were ready to learn and we were not going to turn them away. All right? So I just put this here, the next one. A little bit about what we did. We had themes for the 5 weeks. So week 1 was all about plants, and we're reinforcing some of the concepts, the topics that they should have learned in the lower years. But what we did was for the entire week, we looked at that theme. We had Science Mondays, when we looked at the scientific aspects of the plant. We had Technology Tuesdays, where we use the technology and allow them to use the technology to explore, research about plants and all of that. We have Wednesday Math Labs, we had Engineering Thursdays, and we have Arts Fridays. And they were so excited. The parents came out and were there while we were teaching. Some of them sat down because they were so intrigued. We got some STEM kits to assist them as well. And I don't know if you can zoom it up, but if you notice each day, this is the way it went. In the morning, we had word play around. So we're infusing word recognition skills and activities in the content that they were exploring. We had vocabulary development skills after that. We had comprehension practice, and we had writing, but it was all about the scientific concept of plants. So we sought to find how we could integrate as the educators and help them to amalgamate as the learners. Still with me? All right. So that's what we did. Research question 2, almost done. How does the implementation of the STEAM infused with explicit literacy instruction affect the academic performance of these students? After 3 weeks, there were very good outcomes. So guess what? Despite community disturbances that shortened the duration of the program, it was supposed to be a 5-week program, the remedial students, they actually showed marked improvement in word recognition and vocabulary skills. I can tell you that when I'm in a regular pull-out program at a school, for 3 weeks, I'm not getting that type of results. So for me, I know it definitely makes a difference to integrate STEAM as the focus. And then on the back end now, we infuse the literacy skills because STEAM is what is getting them to capture their attention, right? They want to be involved in all of the STEAM-related activities. But at the same time now, we scaffold them to develop the literacy skills. So there was great increase in participation, interest and effort, which resulted in exceptional academic productivity. They started to independently use context clues and determine meaning of unfamiliar words. So these are just some snippets. Science Mondays, and we ensure that we try our intentionally planned for all the C's. Technology Tuesdays, and the collaboration, they were allowed to bring their devices. Many of them, when you ask them what is technology, they say TV, phone, Wi-Fi. So they even learned about the concept of technology, which they're using so much. Many of them were, Mr. Anderson and the Media Tech people, you might need to recruit some of them. Even though their literacy levels were low, their technology skills were off the chain. So they need to be honed in. And they really embrace the collaboration in terms of research. Next one, engineering. Both females and males, they love the engineering. So we were provided with Legos for them to create things related to the themes. And then we encourage them to talk about it, to encourage the communication skills, and others to ask questions. That doesn't look like a plant, you know, and it's, oh no, this represents a leaf, and so on, right? And yes, that is literally coming out at the end of the day. And then the arts, they were able to do actual visual arts, and they were able to do actual performing arts where they dressed up, you know, and they had dramatization and so on. And then this was the icing on the cake. We dealt with plants, and a sponsor was very intrigued. He was a relative of one of the students, and he sponsored buses to bring them to the Institute of Jamaica Museum, because he's never came home. He says he's never done Louis a take up book, but he's never came home researching about foliage and all these things with word cards and stick them up on the wall and all these things. So he was visiting. He was like, what is this? And he was telling him all about, you know, what he was learning. And he came to see us, the managers. And we said, yes, we want to do the trips for them, but you know, there is the monetary resources. And he organized it. And they had a wonderful time, the tour and so on. We actually helped them. We allowed them to go to Emancipation Park with structured play. And they did not know that the plants there are labeled. So we found a way to all of their experiences connected to let them understand that you're not learning to do tests alone. You're learning to be able to function in real life. All right. Oops. All right, could we go to the next slide? I'm not seeing one of my slides on here, but okay. Next slide, maybe the slide was switched and then we'll come back. So with all of the excitement, guess what? This one, media came in. Private sector sponsors came on board in terms of, go back to the observer feature. So private sector persons came in to help to sponsor whatever else we needed. And we needed help with internet and Wi-Fi to spread across the community, so that not only research and work was being done at the centers, but at home they could access. And then there was the feature where the students, the program was highlighted, coming from the Michael University College and myself and Mrs. Stevenson in terms of facilitating the program. And then can we go back to the previous one where we had the student share an experience. We were so excited to attend this summer camp, and we learned so much about technology, plants, and even performing arts. I know I found the word tree that we made in the engineering lab very interesting. I am looking forward to a new school term because of what I learned this summer. And the teacher was there and they were given back to school supplies at the end of the program. So let's go ahead to implications. So for us, we have the mandate to produce teacher training institutions to look at our programs. And I mean, it ties in directly with what you're saying too. The theoretical frameworks like multiple intelligences, problem-based learning, and the situational model, so that students will be able to transfer the knowledge and apply skills from various competencies to solve problems and create innovative solutions that will increase productivity and economical growth. Because what we do will affect change in homes, in communities, in parishes, in the nation, in the world. Current teachers need to upskill to understand these frameworks and methodologies. Stakeholders, we need to collaborate to aid teachers with preparing for and implementing innovative instructional activities for positive and advanced learning outcomes. The next step was to respond. The limitations were that because of the community, it was disrupted because of violence. And what we were looking at now is to take it into schools that have a more structured form. We're already been asked to come in. And we were to respond to several requests. There was a request from a particular school. It's a vocational institute with about 30 boys in a focus group that they needed help to know how to reach them. It's a technical school, but guess what? The low literacy levels were preventing them from operating, even doing the technical work that they were doing, right? So, and when we then request from prep schools, primary schools, collect data, publish, take action. And I'm here to proudly say that phase 2 commenced February 2014. We had 4 weeks of professional development training for those vocational teachers. And the things that you hear, they were even invited here at the language department, Robinson Smart Room. They were in awe of, that was, yes, 20, I have 14 is 20, I'm sorry, 2024. Please put 2024. Right, so that was last month. Yes, and they learned so much. It was 14 teachers, maybe the 14 got me, 14 teachers. And these teachers, some of them did not have pedagogical training. Right, they were tradesmen, electricians, and so on. So they were hungry for the knowledge about STEAM. They were hungry for the knowledge about word recognition strategies to infuse in my woodwork class, to infuse in my electrical class, because at the end of the day, no, there's terminology to be read. There is communication to be done. Imagine if incorrect communication takes place in terms of the wiring. You understand what I'm saying? So brings it back. The next step is also the material that we use in the training program from the summer and the material that we used for the vocational teachers. We're actually putting it together since we're getting so many calls because we can't be everywhere. So how do we share the information? So we're putting together this instructional manual for Jamaican teachers. I've already created the logo. So we're on our way. And can I tell you, this experience at ITA in terms of research have me on a whole other level. So I'm very thankful. I'm very grateful. I don't know why I came here with the client, but I'm very grateful. Thank you very much.
Feel excitement. Boy, I'm so excited and so proud of my colleagues. And listen, my man, you see, as a researcher, you know that I'm very passionate about research as well. That the action research, and I'm saying this because I want our dean and BPs to hear. We need to get back. We had scaled down our action research to having them just do proposals. We have to get back to actually they go there. We never know what action research can lead to. It starts with something you are in personal interest. It moves on to professional development, and it moves on to policies, political influence. So we have to get on board. So I hope that I'm so excited and really proud, and I'm sure you catch the excitement. All right? Yes, sir.
Jackson Reynolds, Miss, just stand beside me a little bit here. You see, because I want to say something. I went to the Richmond Secondary School and I was in the vocational track. Yeah, St. Mary Technical now, but then was it. I had a teacher of electrical installation who was one of those licensed electricians who did 18 months and came back. But Mrs. Ross and Miss Williams never eased up on the language or the literacy. What you're doing is great. And people know me, I don't say these things. In this very lecture theater, I stood up and asked a question in a general staff conference. And somebody said, which subject is he in? And they said, industrial arts. And they said, I'm amazed. The work you're doing is tremendous. Because as you said, the working with the hands cannot work without the brain. And the scientists know that. You cannot design and be creative. They talk about innovation and creativity. Where you get that from if you cannot communicate, if you cannot understand, if you cannot comprehend, if you cannot evaluate, if you cannot be engaged in analysis and even philosophy. So I want to commend you. I won't say anything else. Blessing.
I know we are stretched for time, but any question, any burning questions or comments? The research speaks for itself, right? The research speaks for itself. Yes, Mrs.
Have you discovered how the Creole, I don't want to use the word interfere, complements their understanding or their ability to learn the language or the literacy? Because sometimes how we teach in terms of, English as a first language as opposed to a second language, did you or explore any of that in terms of how their Creole influence how they learn the language or the literacy?
Definitely. In our landscape, the language acquisition process that we go through is completely different from other countries because of our history and our language development. And what I have found in my 18 years is that persons come to you communicate in a particular way, embrace it, and help them to understand, right? Help them now to understand why is it that they need to master all the skills in this pattern. So, I say to persons, even my students all the time, when I don't like when people say talk properly. No. Patois is patois and a very good language, and I love patois, and we should embrace it as a part of our history.
Right.
And English is English. English is the legal and formal language of the nation.
Yes.
So if you're going to be a functional citizen, you must master the English language skills. However, just like this person Spanish, Dutch,
Yes.
when you're learning another language, right? We have to utilize what they are talking to us in. And we have to embrace it. And I dare say patois is rooted into the creativity in Jamaican people. So at the end of the day, it's about helping them to understand how to code switch. Even our own Myconians, I explained to them, there is room for code switching, even when you're teaching, but it must be clear. When you're making or giving an example in patois, right, to capture the attention and so on, it must be clear. But when you're instructing in standard English, it must be clear. No twanging and all of that and mix up, right? So that was from previously, Mrs. Williams, what we do is embrace what they come with and we scaffold them and help them to understand. But this is a skill. This is the language that you're going to have to do business in. This is the language that your tests are in. This is the language that all the levels of your professionalism is going to be conducted through. So you must master this language. Similarly, we will go into why is it mandatory to do it at CSEC, English and math. So that's the embrace on, yes.
Oh, in terms of you said the centers, students coming into the centers, it was low attendance. Did at any time you explore the amongst the reasons why they are not coming, the interference from schools or teachers. Anecdotally, I know that sometimes teachers or schools don't like when outsiders interfere with their instructional, process. It's the complete opposite in this situation. Can you guess why? Think about a regular classroom teacher teaching, right? And because there's no streaming anymore in our formal system. And there is a set of students who are underperforming, don't have the skills, disrupting your class and all of that. They are happy that someone else is taking on that part. So it's a complete opposite, right? Yes. Yes, sir.
I enjoyed your presentation, particularly, I shouldn't say it this way, but I'm gonna say it, the last part that shows your heart. There was a time, maybe a month or so ago, I can't remember how long, but I was reflecting on the Michael, and I felt that we had lost our way. But I see hope
Yes.
in terms
yes.
of, and let me be explicit, yes. Because sometimes we put, it's not, what do I say this now? It's practical to think about the rent and the mortgage and the car payment and the children that must go to school and so on. But as a teacher, the importance of ensuring that somebody's mind is open
Yes.
should not be a trade-off for those things. It must be both, not either. And I mean, I've had situations since the last 4 years where I've seen it, and I've been very sad about it, but I was very encouraged this morning to listen to you.
Yes. Any other burning question? All right. Well, it's my pleasure. Well, before I do this, I'm going to be inviting Sir Sewell, Doc, Benjamin. Is my dean gone? Is the dean? Somebody can take it for her. It's our pleasure from ITA to make these presentations of our microjournals, special issues in education. And by the way, I'm in this too. Looking at the NSC, teachers per. And for our HOD from professional studies as well. He's a HOD, and you could take the one for the dean as well. All right, so boy, all good things must come to an end. It has been a wonderful morning. Do you agree? Let us put our hands together and let's applaud our presenters. You have stirred our intellect. You have provoked our thoughts, and you have activated our social conscience, especially with the action research. And we want to commend you and to implore you to continue. This is just the beginning, and we'll never know where this will take us. You know, a teacher touches eternity. He never knows where his influence stops. Touch generation after generation. Maybe after we are gone, you know, people will be reading about what we have researched and what we have done. But how could I end this afternoon session without thanking you, our wonderful audience? Without you, we would be presenting to empty seats. And I'm sure you are empowered and you are motivated to get on with research. Just to remind you that we continue at 2 o'clock as our Professor Clinton Hutton, Director of ITA, will be presenting on Marcus Garvey, the pedagogy of self-directed learning. And I hope the students who are doing foundations of education, especially, and practicum that they need. And all of everybody should be here to hear from this wonderful scholar, a Myconian. And by the way, my Myconian too, many moons ago from St. Mary, one of the best parish, yes. And of course, it will be in collaboration with grad school, as our chairperson will be Mrs. Maxine Henry Wilson. I am proud to be a Myconian. And, as somebody said to me, you're a real Myconian, because everything I do it with my mind. So I'm thanking you and God's richest blessings on all of you.